Welcome to Mindleapic. As the night deepens and everything around you grows still, I'm glad you've come here to rest. If these gentle words help carry you towards sleep, please consider liking the video, subscribing to the channel, and pressing the bell so these calm stories can find you again whenever the world feels too loud. Take a slow, easy breath now. Let your body settle heavier into the bed. And, if you wish, tell me in the comments, where are you listening from tonight? A quiet room somewhere familiar, perhaps, or a place where the night air feels cool and peaceful. Wherever you are safe here, held gently in the soft hush of times long past. Tonight, we begin Tranquil Myths of the Middle Ages, figures woven from gentle folklore. These are the quiet shapes that drifted through the thoughts of people centuries ago, figures born not from stone or parchment records, but from the slow telling and retelling around hearth fires, in the murmur of monks at their desks, in the pause between one season and the next. They were never quite of this world in the way a farmer or a weaver was, yet they carried a kind of truth that felt comforting, steady, unchanging. We will move among them without haste, letting each one rise like morning fog over still water. Present, soft, and then fading back into silence as naturally as breath. We start in the green, rolling lands of early Britain, in the centuries when the year numbers had not yet climbed so high. There were stories told of a king whose name felt ancient even then, a presence more felt than seen, like the warmth of sun through closed shutters. His court stood in a hall built of great timbers, the roof high and open to the smoke that rose in slow spirals from the long hearth at the center. The floor was strewn with fresh rushes that released a faint, sweet scent when stepped upon, and long benches ran along the walls, their wood worn smooth by generations of quiet sitting. Tapestries hung in soft folds, their colors muted by time. Greens and browns and faded golds that caught the firelight without brightness, only a gentle glow. The king sat at the far end on a chair of plain oak, no crown of gold, only the weight of his own calm presence. Around him, men gathered not in ranks or lines, but in easy clusters, speaking in low voices of ordinary things, the slow ripening of barley in the fields beyond the palisade, the steady flow of a nearby river that never ran dry even in the longest summers, the way the sheep moved across the hills in unhurried lines when the grass was sweetest. Wooden cups passed from hand to hand, filled with mead or ale poured from pitchers that stood on low tables, and the only sounds were the soft crackle of burning logs, the occasional settling of the roof beams overhead, the distant call of an owl beyond the walls. No one raised a voice, no one hurried. The talk moved like water, finding its own level. Someone would speak of a new calf born in the byre, another of the way. The apple trees had set fruit this year, without late frost to harm them, and all would nod slowly, as though such small blessings were enough to fill an evening. At the heart of the hall stood a table unlike any other, wide, round, its surface polished by years of use until it gleamed softly in the dimness. Every place around it was the same, no head higher than another, no seat reserved for rank. Men sat with their cloaks draped over the backs of chairs, their hands resting open on the wood, their swords left leaning against the wall in corners where shadows gathered. There was little need for blades here. The land itself seemed to hold peace like a held breath. Outside the hall, meadows stretched away in gentle curves, bordered by low stone walls built one rock upon another without mortar. Only patience. Sheep grazed in scattered groups, heads down, moving so slowly they seemed part of the landscape. Cottages dotted the slopes farther off, low, rounded roofs of thatch, doorways small and welcoming, thin lines of smoke rising straight into windless air from holes in the roof. Children played near the thresholds with smooth pebbles and lengths of stick, their voices carrying only as far as the nearest hedge before fading into the larger quiet. The king walked among these places on foot, his cloak plain wool, his boots softened by the same paths his people used every day. He would stop beside a man guiding a plow through dark earth and ask after the soil, or pause at an orchard gate to watch bees move among white blossoms, or sit for a time on a low bench outside a cottage while a woman spoke of her herb garden and the way rosemary held its scent even through winter. No proclamations were made, no decrees carved in stone, simply the steady rhythm of days folding one into the next, like pages turned in an old book left open by a window. In time, the tales grew quieter still. They spoke of a sword resting at the bottom of a lake whose surface lay so calm it held the sky without ripple, of a lady whose words were few and soft as the sound of rain on leaves, of journeys that ended not with fanfare, but with a slow return to familiar hearths, to fires banked low for the night, to beds prepared with clean linens and pillows of straw and feather. These were not tales of seeking glory, but of finding rest after long, uneventful days, of coming home when the light was fading and the first stars appeared one by one above the treetops. The king's name was spoken sometimes, sometimes not. It mattered little. What remained was the feeling he carried, that a realm could hold together through listening, through small kindnesses repeated day after day, through the patient turning of seasons without need of force or proclamation. The fire in the great hall burned lower as the hours passed. Shadows lengthened across the rushes, softening every edge. The men around the round table spoke less and less, content simply to sit in the warmth, to watch the flames curl and settle, to let silence fill the spaces between words. Outside, the night deepened over the fields. The river murmured on its unchanging course. The sheep lay down in their wool to sleep beneath the same sky their ancestors had known, and in that stillness the figure of the king became less a person and more a gentle idea, one that drifted through the minds of those who listened, comforting as the weight of a blanket drawn up to the chin, steady as the slow beat of a heart at rest. Now, as your own breathing grows slower, deeper, we allow this first quiet myth to settle back into the background, like a lantern carried away down a long stone passage until its light is only the faintest warmth at the farthest edge of sight. There is no need to follow it. The night holds everything gently, and the story waits, patient and unhurried, for when you are ready to hear more. As the night outside your window continues its slow, unbroken drift, the hearth fire in that ancient hall has settled now into a bed of soft, glowing embers, reddened coals that pulse faintly, like the quiet rhythm of breath in sleep. The long benches stand empty, their wood still warm from the day's sitting, and the round table gleams dimly under the last traces of light, its surface reflecting nothing but the gentle rise and fall of shadows. The king has long since stepped away, his footsteps fading along the earthen path that winds between the cottages, leaving only the memory of his calm presence, a presence that required no words to be felt. The hall itself seems to breathe more slowly now, the timbers overhead creaking once or twice as the night air cools them, then falling silent again. Rushes underfoot lie undisturbed, their faint herbal scent lingering in the still air, mingling with the smell of cooled wood smoke and the distant, earthy dampness of the meadows beyond the walls. Beyond the palisade, the landscape rests without hurry, Fields of barley stand tall and motionless, their heads heavy with grain, that will wait patiently for the scythe in the weeks to come. The river moves with the same unvarying steadiness it has known for centuries, its surface a dark mirror that holds the scattered stars without tremor. Low stone walls curve across the hillsides, built by hands that worked one stone at a time, year after year, until the boundaries they marked became as natural as the contours of the land itself. Sheep lie folded into the grass, their thick wool rising and falling in slow waves, their eyes half closed against the cool night breeze that carries the scent of dew settling on leaves. Cottages along the slopes show only the faintest glow from within. Perhaps a single rushlight left burning low on a windowsill, its flame steady and small, casting a warm circle no larger than a handspan across the packed earth floor. Inside one such cottage, a woman sits on a low stool, her hands moving automatically through the last of the day's spinning, the wheel turning with a soft, repetitive hum that blends into the quiet like a lullaby. The thread grows longer, finer, winding onto the spindle in even coils, each turn the same as the last. No rush, no break in rhythm. Beside her, a child sleeps on a pallet of straw covered with a woolen blanket, small chest rising and falling in perfect time with the wheel's motion. Farther along the valley, another dwelling stands half hidden by an ancient apple tree, its branches spreading wide and low, heavy with fruit that has not yet fully ripened. The tree has stood there longer than the cottage, its trunk thick and gnarled, bark furrowed like old parchment. In spring it will bloom again in soft white clouds. In autumn, the apples will drop one by one into the grass with gentle thuds, and through winter it will wait, bare and patient, for the return of warmth. The cottage door is closed now, latched with a simple wooden bar, and inside the hearth holds only embers, banked carefully with ash to keep a low heat through the night. A wooden bowl rests on the table, half filled with the last of the evening's pottage. Barley, leeks, a few herbs gathered from the garden patch behind the house. The air inside is warm, scented with wood smoke and the faint sweetness of drying apples strung from the rafters. No sound disturbs the room except the occasional pop of an ember and the soft sigh of wind moving past the thatch. These places, these small corners of the imagined realm, hold no secrets or sudden revelations. They simply exist, day after day, season after season, in the same quiet way. The paths between them are worn smooth by feet that walk them without haste. Farmers carrying baskets of roots from the fields, women bringing water from the well in wooden buckets that swing gently from yokes across their shoulders, children following the same trails with bare feet or simple leather shoes, gathering sticks or chasing butterflies that drift lazily over the hedgerows. The hedgerows themselves are old, woven of hawthorn and blackthorn, their branches intertwined so tightly that they form walls higher than a man's head, thick with berries in late summer and shelter for small birds that flit from twig to twig without alarm. Gates of rough-hewn wood stand open during the day, closed at dusk, their hinges of leather or rope creaking faintly when moved by the breeze. In the tales that lingered longest, the king's court was never far from these ordinary scenes. He might appear at the edge of a field while the plowman rested his oxen, sitting on the low wall to watch the slow turning of the soil, the dark earth opening in neat furrows behind the blade. Or he might pause by the river bank where women washed linens, the water swirling gently around their hands, the cloth beaten softly against smooth stones until it lay clean and pale on the grass to dry in the sun. Conversations were brief, unhurried. Words about the weather's kindness this year, the way the river had stayed clear even after heavy rains upstream, the health of the village bees that hummed steadily through the clover. No great matters were discussed, no urgent decisions pressed. The king listened, nodded, sometimes smiled, in the quiet way of one who has seen many seasons pass without change. Then he would rise, brush the dust from his cloak, and continue along the path, leaving behind only the sense that the day had been noticed, acknowledged, held gently for a moment before being let go. As the moon rises higher now, its light falls silver across the sleeping land, over the thatched roofs, the stone walls, the still river, the folded sheep. Everything lies at rest, wrapped in the same soft darkness that covers your own room. The myths of this time were never loud or demanding. They were like this moonlight, present, calm, unchanging, offering no more than the reassurance that the world could turn quietly, that order might come from patience rather than proclamation, that a single steady presence could be enough to hold a place, together without ever raising its voice. Let your thoughts drift with that same silver light, softening at the edges, growing heavier with each slow breath. The story continues in its own gentle time, moving onward like the river that never hurries, waiting only for the moment when your eyelids grow too heavy to keep open, when sleep arrives as naturally as night following day. The night has deepened further now, the kind of deep that wraps every sound in layers of softness until even the smallest rustle feels distant and dreamlike. In the quiet villages scattered across those ancient hills, the last candles have been pinched out one by one, leaving only the faint silver of moonlight slipping through. Cracks in shutters or under door hedges. The thatched roofs gleam palely under that light, their straw laid in careful, overlapping rows that have kept out rain and wind for generations without complaint. Below them, inside the low walls of wattle and daub, people lie on simple beds, straw ticks covered with homespun wool, pillows stuffed with dried lavender or feathers gathered from geese that wander, the common land by day. Breathing slows in every room, chests rising and falling in the same unhurried rhythm, as though the entire countryside has joined in one long, shared exhale. Out in the open, the fields rest completely. The barley stalks stand motionless now. No breeze strong enough to move them at this hour. Dew has begun to gather on their tips, tiny beads that catch the moonlight and hold it like quiet lanterns until morning. The river continues its patient journey, water sliding over rounded stones with a murmur so low it blends into the background of night itself, never louder, never softer, simply present. Along its banks, willows lean toward the current, their long branches trailing in the flow, leaves brushing the surface in slow, repetitive strokes that create the gentlest of ripples. Frogs call once or twice from the shallows, soft and far apart, then fall silent again, content to let the darkness take over. In one small cottage near the river's bend, a weaver has left her loom for the night. The threads hang straight and even, half-finished cloth stretched taut between the beams, its pattern simple, stripes of natural wool alternating, with dyed yarn the color of faded sage. She has wound the last shuttleful carefully, placed the smooth wooden tool on the bench beside the loom, and covered the work with a clean linen cloth to keep dust from settling overnight. The room smells faintly of lanolin and wood smoke, of the dried herbs hanging in bundles from the rafters. Thyme, chamomile, yarrow, each bunch tied with twine, and left to release its scent slowly into the air. A single rushlight had burned earlier, Now its holder stands empty, a thin trail of hardened tallow marking where the flame lived its brief, steady life. On the hearth, embers lie buried under ash, warm enough to keep the chill from the floor stones, but not enough to wake anyone who might stir in the night. Nearby, in the byre attached to the cottage, 2 oxen stand dozing in their stalls. Their heads hang low, eyes half closed, jaws working slowly on the last of the evening's hay. The straw beneath them is fresh, spread thickly that afternoon, and the air holds the warm, grassy smell of their breath mingled with the earthiness of the packed floor. A wooden yoke rests against the wall, its leather straps oiled and supple, ready for tomorrow's slow pull through the same field that has known their steps since they were calves. No sound comes from them now except the occasional soft huff, the faint shift of weight from one hoof to another. Small movements that carry no urgency, only the comfort of routine. The paths that connect these cottages wind gently through the landscape, bordered on either side by the old hedgerows. At night the thorns seem softer, their sharp edges hidden in shadow, and the berries, black and red, hang untouched, waiting for daylight when birds will return to peck at them in unhurried turns. Rabbits move along these paths sometimes, noses twitching, ears turning slowly to catch the faintest sound, but even they travel without haste, pausing often to sit upright and listen to the stillness before, continuing on their way. Owls glide overhead on silent wings, pale shapes against the darker sky, hunting without rush. Their calls are few and spaced far apart, low hoots that drift across the fields and fade before they can startle anything awake. In the tales that once drifted through these places, the king sometimes walked these same paths after the hall had emptied. He carried no torch, moonlight was enough, and his eyes had grown accustomed to the dark over many years. His cloak brushed the tops of the grasses that edged the way, releasing faint scents of dew and greenness with each step. He might stop at a gate, rest his hand on the rough wood, and look out across a sleeping meadow where sheep lay in loose clusters, their white forms like pale stones scattered by some patient hand. Or he might pause beside the river, watching the water move steadily onward, reflecting the same moon that shone on every cottage, every field, every quiet life within his imagined realm. No one waited for him. No one expected words or decrees. He simply walked, noticed, continued, his presence as natural and unremarkable as the turning of the seasons themselves. These myths never asked to be believed. In the way stone castles or written, laws demand belief. They asked only to be remembered in quiet moments, when a hand paused over the spindle, when a plowman leaned on his handles to catch his breath, when a mother drew the blanket higher over a sleeping child. They were small comforts, woven from the same threads as daily life. The smell of bread cooling on a windowsill, the sound of rain tapping steadily on thatch, the warmth of wool against skin on a cool evening. And because they were never forced or proclaimed, they lingered longer than louder tales, settling into the bones of the land like roots that spread slowly underground, holding everything together without ever being seen. Now the moonlight has begun to pale at the edges. The first hint that night will not last forever, though it still holds the world in its gentle palm. Your own breathing has found its deepest rhythm, slow and even, matching the rise and fall of those distant fields, those quiet rivers, those patient hearths. Let the images drift as they will, soft, unhurried, fading one into another like mist at dawn. There is time yet. The night is wide and kind, and the next part of the tale waits, calm and steady, until Your thoughts grow too heavy to follow, and sleep takes their place without a sound. The darkness now lies thicker across the land, a soft, enveloping blanket that muffles every edge and quiets every whisper until the world feels wrapped in layers of calm. Moonlight has grown fainter, retreating behind thin veils of cloud that drift without haste, their shapes slow and changing so gradually they seem almost still. In the villages, sleep has settled fully. Deep, even breaths behind every closed door, the kind of rest that comes after long days of simple, repeated work. No lamps flicker anymore. The last glows have been carefully extinguished. Wicks trimmed and cooled, leaving only the memory of their warm light in the air. The cottages themselves seem to breathe more slowly, their thick walls holding the day's warmth close, releasing it little by little into the night like a held sigh. Along the winding paths, grass stands tall and undisturbed, silvered faintly where moonlight still reaches through the thinning clouds. The hedgerows have grown denser in shadow, their branches interwoven so tightly that small creatures find safe hollows within them. Mice curled in nests of dry leaves, hedgehogs tucked beneath roots, all motionless now, trusting the night to keep its gentle watch. The river has grown even quieter, its surface a smooth, unbroken sheet that reflects nothing clearly anymore, only the vague suggestion of sky and the occasional slow swirl where a leaf has fallen and drifts without hurry. Willow branches trail longer fingers in the current, moving back and forth in the same lazy rhythm, never breaking the peace of the water's steady flow. In one cottage, set a little apart, near where the path curves toward an old oak grove, a potter has finished his day's labor hours ago. The wheel stands silent now, its broad wooden disc still damp from the last shaping, clay residue clinging in faint gray streaks along the edges. Bowls and jars rest on long shelves against the wall. Simple forms, wide mouths, gently rounded sides, each one thrown with the same patient pressure of hands that have known this motion since childhood. They sit in neat rows, waiting for the kiln tomorrow, their surfaces smooth, where thumbs have pressed and smoothed again, erasing every mark of haste. The kiln itself is a low dome of brick outside the door, its mouth closed with a slab of stone, the fire long since banked under ash so that only the faintest warmth radiates from its base. Inside the cottage, the air holds the clean, earthy scent of wet clay mingled with the dry sweetness of herbs, tied in the rafters and the lingering trace of wood smoke. From the small hearth, a wooden stool sits pulled close to the wheel, its seat worn concave from years of sitting, and beside it lies a damp cloth folded precisely, ready for the next morning's first turn. Farther along the same path, a thatcher's home stands low and broad, its roof freshly mended in patches where winter storms had thinned the straw. The new bundles lie layered thickly, golden even in the dimness, their ends trimmed neatly so that rain will run off in steady streams rather than pool. Inside, the thatcher sleeps on a wide pallet near the hearth, one arm resting across a woolen blanket, his tools hung in careful order on pegs along the wall. Hooks, knives, wooden mallets, all cleaned and set away for the night. The room is warm from the banked fire, the air thick with the scent of dried reeds and the faint nuttiness of barley bread left cooling on a shelf. A small window, shuttered tight, lets in no light now, only the softest sound of wind brushing past the eaves, a sound so regular it becomes part of the breathing of the house itself. These homes, these small shelters scattered across the imagined landscape, hold no grandeur. Their walls are not straight or perfect, Their roofs sag slightly with age. Their floors are uneven stone or packed earth covered with rushes that are changed when they begin to wear thin. Yet everything about them speaks of care, taken slowly. Joints fitted without force, beams chosen for their natural curve, hearths built wide enough to share warmth evenly through the coldest months. No one hurries repairs. A crack in plaster is mended when the weather allows, a loose tile replaced on a dry afternoon. Everything done in its own time so that nothing feels urgent or unfinished. In the old tales that floated through these valleys like mist, the king sometimes rested in places just like these, not as a guest of honor, but quietly, unannounced. He might sit on a bench outside a door while the owner mended a fence nearby, speaking of nothing more than the way the wood had split cleanly that season, or how the soil held moisture longer after last month's gentle rains. Or he might accept a cup of weak ale offered from a plain wooden vessel, drinking slowly while watching bees move among late clover at the field's edge. No ceremony attended these moments. No one bowed or stood aside. He was simply there, part of the day's slow rhythm, then gone again along the path when the sun had moved a little farther west, leaving behind only the same quiet sense of notice that a passing cloud leaves on a meadow. Brief, gentle, soon absorbed back into the larger stillness. The myths never grew loud around such encounters. They remained small, spoken in lowered voices during the long evenings when work was done and the fire burned low. Someone might mention how the king had paused to watch a child roll a hoop along the path, smiling without words as the wooden circle spun steadily forward. Another might recall the time he helped lift a fallen branch from across a lane, his hands steady and unhurried beside those of the farmer. These fragments were shared not to impress, but to fill the silence comfortably, like adding another log to a fire that is already warm enough. They wove themselves into the fabric of daily life so seamlessly that no one questioned whether the king had truly walked those paths. It simply felt right that he had, in the same way it felt right that the river continued to flow and the seasons turned without announcement. Now the clouds have thickened overhead, softening the last traces of moonlight until the night becomes complete and kind. Your own body has grown heavier against the bed, limbs loosening, thoughts drifting farther apart like leaves carried on slow water. Let them float without effort. The cottages, the quiet paths, the patient hands at work and rest. The tale moves onward in the same unhurried way, waiting only for the moment when sleep claims its gentle hold, when everything fades softly into the wide, welcoming dark. The night has reached its fullest depth now, a vast, velvet quiet that presses gently against every surface, every leaf, every stone. Clouds have closed completely overhead, sealing away the last faint silver of the moon until nothing remains but soft, unbroken darkness. In this perfect hush, the villages seem to sink a little, deeper into the earth itself. Cottages settling on their foundations, walls exhaling the last traces of daytime warmth, thatched roofs softening under the weight of accumulated dew. No creature stirs beyond the smallest movements, a leaf trembling once on its stem before falling silently to the grass, a single drop of water sliding from an eave to land with the faintest pat on packed earth below. Inside the potter's cottage, the air has grown cooler, thicker with the scent of cooling clay and the slow release of herbs. From their bundles overhead, the shelves of unfinished vessels stand in patient rows, their rounded shoulders catching no light now, only the invisible presence of the night. The wheel remains motionless, its surface still faintly damp, the cloth beside it folded exactly as it was left. On the low pallet near the hearth, the potter sleeps without turning, one hand open against the woolen cover, fingers relaxed in the same curve they held while shaping clay earlier that day. The banked embers beneath the ash give off no visible glow, only a steady, buried warmth that radiates upward in slow waves, enough to keep the chill from creeping across the floor stones. The door is latched, the shutters drawn tight. Nothing disturbs the even rise and fall of breath that fills the small space. A little farther along the shadowed paths, the Thatcher's home rests in similar stillness. Freshly laid straw on the roof gleams dully where stray moisture has settled, each stalk aligned with care so that the whole surface lies smooth and even. Inside, the tools hang motionless on their pegs, handles worn to the shape of familiar palms, blades cleaned and oiled, waiting without impatience for dawn. The hearth holds the same low heat, ash piled carefully to cradle the last coals like a nest. A wooden bowl sits on the table, empty now except for a few crumbs of bread, and beside it, a clay cup turned upside down to keep dust from settling inside. The Thatcher lies on his wide pallet, blanket drawn to his chest, face slack with the deep ease that follows hours of reaching and lifting. Tying and trimming, his breathing matches the slow creak of the roof beams overhead. Long, unhurried intervals between each soft sound, as though the house itself is dreaming alongside him. Beyond the hedgerows, the fields lie completely at rest. Barley heads bow under their own weight, heavy with the promise of grain that will be harvested in its proper time, not a moment sooner. The grasses between the furrows glisten with dew that has gathered thickly, each blade carrying its own tiny burden without bending. Along the riverbank, the willows have ceased their gentle swaying. Their trailing branches hang limp in the current, stirring only when the water moves them in the slowest possible rhythm. No fish rise to break the surface. No bird calls from the reeds. The river flows on, dark and steady, carrying nothing more urgent than time itself. Sliding past rounded stones, past roots that reach down into cool mud, past the quiet reflections of overhanging branches that no longer show clearly in the absence of light. These landscapes, these small pockets of shelter and open land, exist in the myths without fanfare. The imagined king walked them in the same darkness many times, his steps measured and soft on paths worn by countless others. He needed no lantern. The feel of the ground beneath his boots was enough. Earth packed firm by rain and sun, grass brushing his ankles, stones smooth from years of passing feet. He might pause where the path widened near a cluster of cottages, listening to the faint, collective breathing of sleeping families, a sound so low it merged with the murmur of the river and the occasional sigh of wind high in the treetops. Or he might stand for a long while beside an orchard gate, hand resting on the rough wood, sensing rather than seeing the patient shapes of apple trees beyond. Trunks thick, branches spreading wide, fruit still small and hard, but growing heavier day by day. No words passed between him and the night. No thoughts needed forming. He simply stood, part of the stillness, then moved on when the moment felt complete, cloak brushing the hedgerow as he went. The tales that carried his memory never hurried to explain these quiet wanderings. They were mentioned in fragments during the slow, hours before sleep. Someone, recalling how he had once stopped to right a fallen beehive without disturbing the cluster inside, or how he had sat on a low wall while an old woman spoke of her failing eyesight and the way she still knew every path by feel alone. These moments were shared not as great events, but as ordinary comforts, small threads added to the larger weave of daily life. They helped fill the long evenings when the fire burned low and conversation drifted into silence, offering the gentle assurance that attention could be paid without demand, that presence alone might hold a place steady. Through seasons of change and seasons of sameness alike, the darkness has grown so complete now that it feels almost tangible, a soft weight that rests lightly over everything, over the sleeping villages, the patient fields, the unhurried river, over your own quiet room. Your breathing has deepened further, each inhale slow and full, each exhale carrying thoughts farther away. Let them drift without resistance. The sense of clay and straw, the feel of worn wood under a resting hand, the steady sound of water moving over stones. Nothing needs to be held. Everything continues in its calm, unchanging way. The story flows onward like that same river, smooth and without haste, waiting only for the gentle pull of sleep to draw you fully beneath its surface, into the wide, welcoming silence where all things rest. The darkness has become so complete and gentle, now that it feels like the softest possible covering drawn over the entire world. No trace of moonlight remains. The clouds hold thick and low, cradling every sound, every movement, until even the river's murmur seems wrapped in layers of quiet cotton. The villages have sunk fully into this embrace, cottages low and rounded against the earth, their outlines blurred into the night as though they, too, have closed their eyes for the deepest hours. Roofs of thatch lie heavy with accumulated dew, straw glistening invisibly, each stalk resting exactly where it was placed long ago. The walls, built of woven branches daubed with clay and lime, hold their warmth close to the sleeping forms within, releasing it so slowly that the rooms stay comfortable without effort or flame. In the potter's small dwelling, the air has grown stiller still. The scent of wet clay lingers faintly near the wheel, mingling with the dry, herbal breath of thyme and chamomile hanging overhead. The unfinished vessels on the shelves weighed in perfect patience, wide bowls with gentle curves, tall jars meant for storing grain or honey, their surfaces smooth where fingers have pressed and smoothed again in the same unvarying motion. No dust has settled yet. The linen cloth draped over the work remains clean and folded, precisely at the edges. On the low pallet, the potter lies motionless, blanket drawn to his shoulders, one hand curled loosely near his face, fingers relaxed in the exact shape they held, while centering clay on the wheel earlier. His breathing is long and even, so quiet it blends with the faint creak of settling timbers above, the soft rustle of straw beneath the mattress, the distant, almost inaudible flow of the river beyond the hedgerow. A short distance away, past the curve of the path where nettles grow thick along the verge, the thatcher's cottage rests in the same profound calm. The newly repaired roof holds its shape perfectly. Straw laid in overlapping courses that slope just enough to shed water without hurry. Inside, the hearth's buried embers give off a steady, low warmth that reaches every corner without brightness, enough to keep the packed earth, floor from feeling cold under bare feet when morning comes. Tools hang in their accustomed places on the wall. The curved shears, the wooden mallet with its handle polished smooth by years of use, the iron hook for pulling straw tight, all are still now, their shadows merged into the greater darkness. The thatcher sleeps deeply on his broad pallet, chest rising and falling in slow, measured waves, face turned slightly toward the hearth as though drawn by its invisible heat even in sleep. A wooden cup rests upside down on the table beside an empty bowl. A small pile of dried rushes lies neatly stacked in the corner, ready for fresh strewing when the old ones begin to crumble underfoot. Out beyond the cottages, the fields stretch away into the black. Barley standing tall and heavy-headed, every stalk bowed in the same gentle arc, under the weight of its own ripening. Dew has coated each leaf and grain so thickly that the entire meadow seems to carry a soft, invisible sheen. The grasses between the rows lie flat where the day's passage has pressed them, springing back slowly in the night's stillness. Along the river, willows droop lower now, their long branches trailing motionless in the current, stirring only when the water moves them in the slowest, most repetitive rhythm imaginable. No ripple breaks the surface. No fish stirs beneath. The river simply continues, its patient slide over stones worn round by centuries of the same unhurried touch. These quiet corners of the land hold the myth without needing to speak of it. The imagined king passed through such nights many times in the old tellings, walking the same paths when the villages had fallen silent, his cloak brushing dew-wet grasses, his steps so soft they left no mark on the earth. He needed no light. The feel of the ground guided him. Firm soil here, softer grass there, the slight rise where the path climbed a gentle knoll, the dip where it crossed a small stream on flat stepping stones. He might pause beside a cottage door, listening to the collective breathing within, a low, shared rhythm that rose and fell like waves on a very calm sea. Or he might stand for a long time at the edge of an orchard, hand resting lightly on a gate of weathered oak, sensing the patient shapes of the trees beyond. Trunks thick and dark, branches spread wide in quiet invitation, small fruits growing heavier night by night without announcement. No words were spoken to the darkness. None were needed. He simply stood, felt the stillness settle around him, then continued along the path when the moment had breathed itself complete. The fragments of these wanderings that survived in the tales were never grand or detailed. They were mentioned softly during the slow winding down of evenings, someone saying how he had once lifted a gate that had sagged on its hinges, setting it straight again with steady hands, while the owner watched from the doorway. Another recalling the time he sat on a stone beside a woman carding wool, listening without interruption as she spoke, of the way the fleece had come in thicker this year, the sheep grazing longer on the high pastures. These small memories were shared like shared warmth from the same hearth, comforting, unremarkable, easily absorbed back into the quiet when the fire died low and eyelids grew heavy. The night holds everything now in its deepest, kindest fold. Your own breathing has matched this slowness. Long inhalations that fill the chest completely, long exhalations that carry every last trace of wakefulness away. The weight of your limbs has grown pleasant and heavy. Thoughts have begun to separate, drifting farther apart like clouds that no longer hold shape. Let them go without effort. The low cottages breathing in sleep, the patient river sliding onward, the soft brush of dew on barley, the faint warmth still rising from banked embers. Nothing asks to be remembered. Everything simply continues, calm and unchanging. The tale drifts forward in the same gentle current, waiting only for sleep to gather you fully, softly, into its wide and silent embrace. The night has wrapped itself so completely around the land, now that every outline has softened into one gentle, unbroken shadow. The clouds hang motionless and low, holding back even the faintest suggestion of stars, leaving only the deepest, kindest dark. a darkness that feels protective rather than empty, like the inside of a warm, closed hand. In the villages, nothing moves. Cottages sit low and rounded, their thatched roofs heavy with the slow accumulation of night moisture, straw glistening invisibly under its own weight. The walls of wattle and daub have cooled to the temperature of the surrounding earth, blending so perfectly with the ground that the houses seem grown rather than built. Doors remain latched, shutters sealed tight. No light escapes, no sound rises except the very soft, collective breathing of sleep that drifts from every dwelling like a single, shared sigh. Inside the potter's cottage, time has slowed to the point where it barely registers. The wheel stands silent, its wooden disc still bearing the faint imprint of the last centering, motion, small ridges where thumbs pressed evenly, circles within circles that will be smoothed away with the first turn tomorrow. The shelves hold their quiet assembly of bowls and jars, shapes so familiar they need no watching. Each one sits balanced perfectly, waiting without expectation. The air remains thick with the clean scent of clay, now cooled and settled, layered beneath it the faint, steady release of drying herbs, lavender stems that have lost their strongest perfume but still carry a whisper of it into the stillness. On the pallet near the hearth, the potter rests without stirring, blanket drawn high, one arm folded across his chest, in the same loose curve it takes when he shapes a vessel's rim. His breathing has found its slowest rhythm, long pauses between each inhale and exhale, so even and quiet that the room seems to breathe with him. Timbers overhead settling in the same measured tempo, straw mattress shifting faintly with each slow rise and fall. Not far away, along the same dew-damp path bordered by nettles and low hawthorn, the thatcher's home lies in identical repose. The roof, freshly layered in places, holds its gentle slope without a single stalk out of place. The straw has been combed downward so carefully that water will find its way off in thin, patient rivulets when rain returns. Inside, the hearth's buried warmth lingers like a memory. Ash piled high and smooth, coals cradled beneath in a nest of gray that gives off no light, only the softest, most constant heat. Tools rest on their pegs in perfect order. Shears hung by their handles, mallet laid flat beside them, iron hook turned so its point faces the wall. The table bears only the empty bowl and inverted cup from earlier, crumbs long since brushed away. On the broad pallet, the thatcher sleeps facing the hearth, blanket tucked under his chin, face slack and peaceful, every line smoothed by the depth of rest that follows days of steady overhead work. His breathing matches the house's own slow rhythm, deep, unhurried, with long spaces between breaths where silence has room to expand. Beyond the last cottages, the open land stretches into the black without boundary. Barley fields lie heavy and still, every head bowed under the invisible weight of ripening grain and gathered dew. The grasses between furrows have folded themselves close to the earth, stems pressed flat where footsteps passed hours ago, now springing back so slowly they seem part of the night's own motion. The river has become little more than a dark ribbon threading through the landscape, its surface so calm it holds no reflection at all, only the steady, soundless slide of water over stones worn, perfectly smooth, by the same endless passage. Willow branches hang limp and trailing, their leaves brushing the current in faint, repetitive touches that create no ripple worth noticing. No creature moves along the banks. Even the reeds stand motionless, heads bent slightly forward, as though listening to the quiet they help create. In the soft fragments of the old tales that still drifted through these places, the imagined king often walked the deepest part of such nights. His steps were never hurried. The paths felt them without, marking them, firm earth-giving, slightly under his boots, grass releasing a faint, wet scent with each brush of his cloak hem. He might stop where the river bent closest to the village, standing on the low bank to listen to the water's patient murmur, a sound so constant it became silence itself. Or he might lean against the rough trunk of an ancient oak that marked the edge of an orchard, feeling the bark's deep furrows under his palm, sensing the slow life within the tree. Roots reaching downward through cool soil, branches spreading wide in patient wait for seasons yet to come. No thoughts pressed upon him, no words formed in the darkness. He simply remained for a time, letting the stillness settle. Around his presence, the way dew settles on grass, slowly, evenly, without effort, then moved onward when the moment had exhaled itself fully, cloak trailing softly behind. These quiet passages were never told with flourish. They appeared in the tales as small, comforting pauses, someone murmuring over a dying fire how he had once stood beside a sleeping orchard through the whole length of a moonless night, simply watching the shapes of the trees against the darker sky. Another recalling the way he helped an old man carry a bundle of kindling, the last few steps to his door, setting it down without comment before continuing on his way. Such memories were shared in lowered voices when conversation had already grown thin, offered like a final sip of warm ale before sleep. Gentle, unremarkable, easily let go when eyelids grew too heavy to hold open. The darkness now cradles everything with perfect tenderness. Your own body has sunk deeper into the bed, limbs loose and heavy. Every breath drawn so slowly it feels drawn from some vast, calm reservoir. Thoughts have grown sparse and distant, floating apart like leaves on still water, no longer needing to connect or follow any path. Let them separate without care. The low cottages breathing in unison, the patient river carrying only time, the soft weight of dew on every blade of grass, the faint, buried warmth of embers waiting for morning. Nothing requires attention. Everything rests as it should. The tale continues its slow, steady drift, flowing onward like the river in the dark, waiting only for the gentle moment when sleep gathers you completely, softly into its wide and endless quiet. The night has grown so profound and tender now that it seems to hold the entire land in the softest possible cradle. Darkness lies thick and even, without seam or edge, muffling every outline until the cottages, the fields, the river, the hedgerows all merge into one gentle, breathing whole. No wind moves. The clouds remain perfectly still overhead, sealing away any last hint of sky. Dew has settled so heavily that every surface carries its quiet weight. Straw on roofs, glistening invisibly, grass blades bowed just enough to hold the moisture without breaking, leaves on the willows hanging lower with their own damp burden. The villages rest without a single stir. Every door stays latched, every shutter sealed, every hearth banked under its gray blanket of ash, so that only the faintest, most constant warmth lingers inside the walls. In the potter's low dwelling, the stillness has deepened to something almost tangible. The wheel stands untouched, its broad surface bearing the same faint spiral. Ridges from the last slow turn of the day, small, even circles that speak of hands moving without haste, pressing gently inward and outward in the same patient rhythm. The shelves along the wall hold their silent company of vessels, shallow bowls with wide, welcoming rims, tall storage jars with simple, rounded shoulders, each one formed so carefully that no two are quite identical, yet all feel part of the same quiet family. The air inside remains cool and settled, carrying the clean, mineral scent of clay now fully rested, layered beneath it the soft, fading perfume of herbs suspended. From the rafters, lavender that has given up most of its strength but still offers a whisper when the night air shifts ever so slightly. On the pallet near the hearth, the potter lies in complete repose, blanket drawn high across his chest, one hand resting open near his side, fingers loose and uncurled. His breathing has reached its slowest, most even cadence. Long, full inhalations followed by longer exhalations, pauses between each breath wide enough for silence to settle fully before the next begins. The room breathes with him, timbers overhead giving the occasional faint creak as they cool, straw beneath the mattress sighing softly with each slow shift of weight, the buried embers beneath the ash radiating their steady, invisible heat without flicker or sound. A short way along the darkened path, where the nettles brush against low hawthorn without rustling, the thatcher's cottage lies wrapped in the same profound calm. The roof, mended in careful patches, slopes gently downward, straw combed so neatly that every course lies flat and true, ready to turn aside whatever rain may come in its own unhurried time. Inside, the hearth holds its low warmth, like a secret. Ash smoothed over coals that glow without light, heat rising in slow, even waves that reach the farthest corners of the small space. Tools hang motionless on their pegs, the curved shears with handles worn to the exact shape of familiar palms, the mallet resting flat, the iron hook turned point down against the wall. The table stands bare except for the empty bowl and the cup placed upside down, everything arranged with the same quiet precision used in laying straw, hour after hour. On the wide pallet, the thatcher sleeps facing the hearth, blanket tucked close, face smoothed of every line that work had etched there during the day. His breathing mirrors the house's own slow tempo. Deep draws of air, long releases, wide silences in between where the night itself seems to pause and listen. Beyond the last scattered dwellings, the open land stretches into pure blackness. The barley fields rest heavy and motionless, grain heads drooping under the combined weight of ripeness and dew, every stalk curved in the same patient arc. Grasses between the furrows lie pressed close to the earth, stems still holding the faint memory of daytime, footsteps but now sprung back so gradually they seem part of the night's gentle breathing. The river flows on without haste or hurry, a dark thread winding through the landscape, surface so calm it mirrors nothing at all, only the steady, soundless glide of water over stones, rounded by centuries of the same soft touch. Willow branches trail limply in the current, leaves brushing the flow in faint, repetitive strokes that create no disturbance worth naming. The reeds along the banks stand tall and still, heads inclined slightly as though bowing to the quiet they help sustain. Through these deepest hours, the old tales sometimes pictured the imagined king still walking, his presence moved without sound or shadow, boots treading softly on paths worn smooth by countless quiet feet, cloak him gathering dew that darkened the wool without weighing it down. He might pause where the river curved nearest the sleeping cottages, standing on the low bank to feel rather than hear the water's patient passage, the cool air rising from its surface brushing his face in slow waves. Or he might rest a hand against the trunk of an old oak at the orchard's edge, bark rough and familiar under his palm, the tree's slow life pulsing faintly beneath. Roots, drawing moisture from deep soil, branches spread wide in silent wait for seasons yet unborn. No words rose in these moments. None were called for. He remained simply as part of the stillness, letting the darkness fold around him the way it folded around every cottage, every field, every blade of grass, slowly, evenly, without distinction or demand, then stepped onward along the path when the night had breathed its full measure around him. These silent wanderings lived on in the tales only as faint, comforting echoes, mentioned in the last murmurs, before sleep when the fire had dwindled to nothing but ash and warmth. A voice might recall how he had once stood motionless beside a sleeping garden through the longest part of a starless night, simply present while the plants rested under their own quiet growth. Another might speak of the time he lifted a fallen branch from across a narrow lane, setting it aside without haste, so the path remained clear for morning feet. Such fragments were never told to astonish. They were offered like the final glow of embers, small, steady, easily let fade when eyelids grew too heavy and words dissolved into silence. The night now holds you in the same deep, tender fold. Your body has grown wonderfully heavy against the bed, every limb relaxed beyond any need to move. Breaths come slower still, long, full, effortless, each one carrying the last scattered. Thoughts farther away until they float, separate and light, like leaves adrift on calm water. Let them go without reaching, the low cottages breathing together, the patient river sliding onward, the soft press of dew on every surface, the buried warmth waiting patiently beneath ash. Nothing needs guarding. Everything rests as it has always rested. The tale drifts forward in its gentle, unbroken current, flowing onward like the dark river itself, waiting only for the soft, inevitable pull of sleep to draw you completely beneath its surface, into the wide, kind, endless quiet where all things are held without effort. The night has settled into its most complete and gentle form now, a vast, seamless quiet that enfolds every inch of the land without distinction or hurry. Darkness flows over everything, like the softest wool drawn, slowly across a sleeping form, thick, even, comforting in its absolute presence. No breath of wind disturbs the stillness. The clouds remain locked in place overhead, heavy and unmoving, holding back any trace of light until morning feels impossibly distant. Dew clings thickly to every surface, turning straw on roofs into pale, invisible silver, weighing down grass blades until they bow in perfect, patient arcs, gathering moisture on willow leaves until they hang lower still, dripping only when the weight becomes just enough to release one slow, silent drop at a time. In the potter's small cottage, the hush has become so deep it feels like the room itself has paused between breaths. The wheel rests motionless, its wooden face marked by the same faint, concentric ridges left from the last gentle centering, circles within circles, each one formed by the same unvarying pressure of hands that knew exactly how much force to apply and when to ease away. The shelves stand in their quiet rows, holding bowls with wide, shallow curves and jars with smooth, swelling sides, every piece balanced so naturally they seem to have grown there rather than been placed. The air carries the cool, earthy memory of clay now fully settled. Beneath it, the faint, lingering sweetness of herbs that have given up their strongest scent to the night. lavender stems brittle and dry, chamomile heads faded to pale gold, all releasing only the softest trace when the stillness allows. On the low pallet by the hearth, the potter lies utterly still, blanket rising and falling in the slowest possible rhythm, one hand open against the wool, fingers curved loosely, as though still remembering the shape of a vessel's rim. His breaths come in long, measured waves, deep inhalations that fill the chest completely, longer exhalations that empty it without effort, wide silences between each cycle, where the night itself seems to listen and hold its own. Breath in quiet sympathy. The timbers overhead creak once in a great while, a soft, settling sound that fades before it can disturb anything. The straw beneath the mattress sighs faintly with each slow shift of weight. The embers beneath their blanket of ash continue their patient, invisible glow, warming the stones without ever rising to flame. Along the same shadowed path, where dew has darkened the nettles and softened the hawthorn thorns, the thatcher's cottage rests in the same unbroken calm. The roof lies smooth and thick, straw laid in careful, overlapping layers that slope just enough to guide water away when the time comes, every stalk combed downward with the same steady hand that placed it. Inside, the hearth cradles its low heat like something precious. Ash smoothed, flat, and even, coals nested deep beneath, sending up waves of warmth so gentle they barely stir the air. Tools hang in their familiar places, shears suspended by worn handles, mallet laid beside them, hook turned carefully against the wall so its point finds no danger. The table holds only the empty bowl and the cup set upside down, surfaces wiped clean with the same quiet care used in every task. On the broad pallet, the thatcher sleeps turned toward the hearth, blanket pulled high, face smoothed into perfect rest, every line of effort erased by the depth of this night's peace. His breathing follows the same slow tide as the house around him. Long, full draws of air, longer releases into silence, pauses so wide the quiet has room to expand and settle deeper still. Out beyond the last low roofs, the fields lie wrapped in perfect repose. Barley stands heavy and motionless, heads bowed low under the weight of grain and gathered dew, every stalk curved in the same patient surrender to ripeness. Grasses between the furrows have pressed themselves close to the earth, holding the faint imprint of earlier footsteps but now recovered so. Gradually they seem part of the night's own gentle breathing. The river moves on without sound or rush, a dark, steady current threading through the black, surface calm as polished stone, carrying only the slow passage of time over pebbles worn round by endless, unhurried touches. Willow branches trail limply, leaves brushing the water in faint, repetitive caresses that disturb nothing. Reeds along the banks remain upright and still, heads tilted forward as though in quiet reverence to the silence they help deepen. In the oldest, softest layers of the tales, the imagined king continued to walk these deepest hours. His steps fell without echo, boots pressing softly into damp earth, cloak gathering the night's moisture in dark, even patches along the hem. He might linger where a small stream crossed the path on flat stones, standing to feel the cool air rising from the water, the faint vibration of its flow through the soles of his feet. Or he might rest his shoulder against the rough bark of an orchard oak, hand open against the trunk, sensing the tree's slow, hidden life, sap moving upward in its own unhurried season, roots drawing from deep, cool earth without haste or strain. No thoughts crowded these moments. No words were needed to fill them. He simply existed within the stillness, letting the darkness wrap around him as it wrapped around every sleeping form, every resting field, every patient blade of grass. Without preference, without demand, only presence so quiet it became part of the night itself, then stepped forward along the path when the silence had breathed its full, slow measure. These faint wanderings survived in the telling only as gentle afterthoughts, whispered when the fire had burned to nothing but ash and lingering warmth, offered like the last sip from a shared cup before eyelids grew too heavy to lift. A low voice might recall how he had once remained beside a quiet garden, through the longest stretch of darkness, simply there, while the plants rested under their own slow growth. Another might mention the time he set a sagging gate-post straight again, hands steady and unhurried beside those of the owner, then continued on without looking back. Such memories carried no weight of wonder. They were small comforts, easily absorbed into the quiet when words faded and breathing took their place. The night now holds you in its deepest, most tender embrace. Your body rests heavier still against the bed, every muscle loose and surrendered, limbs heavy with the pleasant weight of perfect relaxation. Breaths arrive slower than ever, long, effortless draws that fill you completely, longer releases that empty you gently, silences between so wide the quiet has room to grow. Thoughts have drifted far apart, floating separate and light, no longer tethered to any order or need. Let them scatter without care. The low cottages breathing in slow unison, the patient river carrying only its own calm flow, the soft press of dew on every surface, the buried warmth waiting beneath ash for dawn that remains distant and unhurried. Nothing asks to be held, everything simply continues, soft and unchanging. The tale moves onward in its gentle, unbroken rhythm, drifting like the dark river through the night, waiting only for the soft, inevitable moment when sleep draws you fully beneath its surface, into the wide, kind, endless quiet where rest is complete and all things are held without effort. The night now lies so deep and gentle that it feels like the softest possible veil drawn slowly over every living thing, every stone, every blade of grass. Darkness has become complete and kind, without a single seam of light to break its calm surface. The heavy clouds remain motionless overhead, thick and low, cradling the world in unbroken shadow. Dew has gathered in such quiet, abundance that it clings to every surface without falling. Straw on cottage roofs heavy and dark with moisture. Grass blades curved low under their own damp weight. Willow leaves hanging still and glistening, each one holding its tiny burden until the slightest shift might release one slow, silent drop into the earth below. No sound rises anywhere. The villages have sunk so fully into rest that even the faintest creak of timber or sigh of straw has faded into the larger hush. Inside the potter's low cottage, the stillness has reached a point where time itself seems to pause. The wheel stands untouched, its broad wooden face marked by those same faint, even spirals from the day's last gentle turn. Small ridges where thumbs pressed, inward with perfect patience, circles forming and dissolving in the same unhurried rhythm. The shelves along the wall hold their quiet gathering of forms, wide bowls with soft, open rims that invite without demanding, tall jars with smooth, swelling curves that speak of steady hands and steady days. Every piece rests in balance, no tilt or waver, as though the clay itself has learned to wait without effort. The air inside remains cool and settled, carrying the clean, mineral breath of rested clay. Beneath it the faint, almost vanished sweetness of herbs long dried. Lavender stems brittle now, chamomile faded to pale whispers, all releasing only the gentlest trace when the night air stirs ever so faintly. On the pallet near the hearth, the potter lies in utter surrender, blanket drawn high across his chest, one hand resting open near his side, fingers loose and uncurved. His breathing has become the slowest possible tide. Inhalations, so deep and full they seem drawn. From the room itself, exhalations so long and gentle they empty without trace. Silences between each breath, vast enough for the quiet to settle deeper, to grow roots in the stillness. The timbers overhead give no sound now. The straw beneath the mattress lies motionless. The embers beneath their thick blanket of ash continue their patient, buried warmth, radiating upward in waves so soft they touch the stones without waking them. A short distance along the dew-soaked path, where nettles and hawthorn stand dark and silent, the thatcher's cottage rests in the same profound peace. The roof lies thick and even, straw combed downward in careful, overlapping courses, every stalk aligned so precisely that the whole surface feels like one gentle slope, guiding water away without haste. When rain returns, inside, the hearth holds its low, secret heat, ash smoothed flat and pale, coals cradled deep beneath, sending up warmth that reaches every corner without brightness or stir. Tools hang in their accustomed stillness, shears suspended by handles shaped to familiar palms, mallet laid flat beside them, hook turned point down against the wall in quiet safety. The table bears only the empty bowl and the cup placed upside down, surfaces clean and waiting. On the broad pallet, the thatcher sleeps facing the hearth, blanket tucked close under his chin, face smoothed into complete rest, every trace of the day's effort erased by the depth of this night's calm. His breathing follows the house's own slow rhythm. Long, full draws that fill the chest without hurry, longer releases into silence, pauses so wide the quiet has room to expand and deepen without end. Beyond the last scattered homes, the open land stretches into pure, enveloping black. The barley fields lie heavy and motionless, grain heads bowed low under ripeness and dew, every stalk curved in the same patient arc of waiting. Grasses between the furrows press close to the earth, holding the faint memory of earlier passage, but now recovered so gradually they seem woven into the night's gentle breathing. The river continues its dark, steady flow, a quiet thread winding through the landscape, surface calm as untouched glass, carrying only the slow glide of water over stones smoothed, round by centuries of the same soft, unvarying touch. Willow branches trail without motion, leaves brushing the current in faint, repetitive whispers that create no ripple. Reeds along the banks stand tall and still, heads inclined forward in silent accord with the hush they help sustain. In the softest, most faded layers of the old tales, the imagined king moved through these deepest hours without disturbance. His steps fell so lightly they left no impression, boots pressing into damp earth that gave way gently, cloak him, gathering the night's moisture in even, darkening lines. He might pause where a small stream met the larger river, standing on flat stones to feel the cool air rising from the joining waters, the faint vibration of flow through the soles of his feet. Or he might lean against the wide trunk of an orchard oak, hand open against rough bark, sensing the tree's slow, hidden pulse, sap rising in its own quiet season, roots reaching downward through cool, dark soil without strain or speed. No thoughts pressed in these moments. No need arose to speak or name them. He remained simply within the stillness, letting the darkness fold around him as it folded around every sleeping cottage, every resting meadow, every patient blade of grass, without choice or distinction, only presence so complete it merged, with the night itself, then continued, along the path when the silence had exhaled its full, slow measure around him. These faint memories lived on only in the gentlest whispers, shared when the last ember had cooled, and warmth lingered only in the stones, offered like the final breath before sleep claimed everything. A voice might murmur how he had once stood beside a quiet garden, through the longest stretch of starless dark, simply there, while the earth rested under its own slow turning. Another might recall the time he straightened a leaning fence post with steady hands, working beside the owner without words until the task was done, then walking on into the night. Such fragments carried no urgency. They were small, steady comforts, easily let fade when breathing grew too slow for words and silence took their place. The night now cradles you in its deepest, most tender hold. Your body has sunk completely into the bed, every limb heavy and loose, surrendered to the pleasant weight of rest. Breaths arrive slower still, long, effortless inhalations that fill you without effort, longer exhalations that release everything gently, silences between so vast the quiet has room to grow roots. Thoughts have drifted far apart, floating separate and weightless, no longer needing to connect or linger. Let them scatter without reaching. The low cottages breathing in slow, shared rhythm. The patient river sliding onward with only time in its current. The soft weight of dew on every surface. The buried warmth waiting patiently beneath ash. Nothing requires holding. Everything continues, calm and unchanging. The tale flows forward in its gentle, unbroken current, drifting like the dark river through the endless night, waiting only for the soft, inevitable moment when sleep gathers you fully, softly, into its wide and kind embrace where all things rest without effort or end. The night has deepened into something so vast and tender that it seems to breathe as one single, slow breath across the whole land. Darkness flows without boundary or break, soft as the inside of closed eyelids, wrapping cottages, fields, river, and sky in the same gentle, unvarying hush. The clouds hang motionless and thick, sealing every trace of light away, so completely that dawn feels like a memory too, distant to matter. Dew lies heavy on every surface now. Straw roofs darkened and weighted, grass blades curved low and glistening in the invisible dark, willow leaves hanging still with their small, patient loads, releasing a single drop only when the quiet allows, falling soundlessly into soil that absorbs it without ripple or echo. In the potter's low cottage, the silence has become so full it feels like the room itself has settled into a deeper kind of rest. The wheel stands quiet, its wooden disc bearing those faint, concentric marks from the day's last slow turn, gentle spirals, where hands moved inward and outward with the same calm, unhurried pressure, circles forming softly before fading back into smoothness. The shelves hold their calm assembly of shapes, wide bowls with rims that curve open like welcoming hands, tall jars with bodies rounded in steady symmetry, every piece resting so naturally they seem part of the wall itself. The air carries the cool, clean memory of clay now long rested. Beneath it, the softest possible trace of dried herbs, lavender, stems that have surrendered almost all, their scent, chamomile heads pale and quiet, all offering only the faintest whisper when the stillness itself seems to breathe. On the pallet near the hearth, the potter lies in complete surrender, blanket drawn high, one hand open and relaxed near his side, fingers loose in the gentle curve they take when at rest. His breathing has slowed to its deepest rhythm. Inhalations, so long and full they draw the quiet of the room inward. Exhalations so gentle and prolonged they release everything without trace. Silences between each breath so wide and peaceful that time seems to pause within them. The timbers overhead remain utterly still. The straw beneath the mattress lies without a single shift. The embers beneath their thick layer of ash continue their patient, buried warmth, rising in waves too soft to stir even the finest dust. Along the same dew-heavy path, where nettles and hawthorn stand dark and motionless, the thatcher's cottage rests wrapped in the same unbroken calm. The roof lies thick and smooth, straw laid in careful courses that slope without haste, every stalk combed downward so evenly that the surface feels like one continuous, gentle curve ready to turn water aside in its own quiet time. Inside, the hearth cradles its low heat like something held, close, ash smoothed pale and flat, coals nested deep beneath, sending warmth upward in slow, even pulses that reach every corner without brightness or movement. Tools hang in perfect stillness, shears suspended by handles worn to the exact shape of familiar hands, mallet resting flat, hook turned safely against the wall. The table stands empty except for the clean bowl and the cup placed upside down, everything arranged with the same steady care used in every task of the day. On the broad pallet, the thatcher sleeps facing the hearth, blanket tucked gently under his chin, face smoothed into perfect peace, every line of effort dissolved by the depth of this night's rest. His breathing mirrors the house's own slow tide, long, full inhalations without hurry, longer exhalations into silence, pauses so vast the quiet has room to settle deeper, to become part of the very air. Beyond the last low dwellings, the land stretches into pure, enveloping darkness. The barley fields lie heavy and still, grain heads bowed under ripeness and dew, every stalk curved in the same patient, waiting arc. Grasses between the furrows press close to the earth, holding faint memories of footsteps now recovered so gradually. They blend into the night's gentle breathing. The river flows on without sound or rush, a dark, steady current winding through the black, surface calm as deep sleep, carrying only the slow, unhurried passage of water over stones smoothed round by endless soft touches. Willow branches trail without stirring, leaves brushing the flow in faint, repetitive whispers that disturb nothing at all. Reeds along the banks stand tall and motionless, heads tilted forward in silent harmony with the hush they help create. In the gentlest, most faded threads of the old tales, the imagined king continued to move through these deepest hours. His steps fell so softly they became part of the quiet, boots pressing into damp, earth that yielded without mark, cloakum gathering dew in even, darkening lines along the wool. He might linger where the river bent closest to the sleeping cottages, standing on the low bank to feel the cool air rising from the water, the faint, steady vibration of its flow through the ground beneath him. Or he might rest a hand against the wide trunk of an ancient orchard oak, palm open to the rough bark, sensing the tree's slow, hidden life, sap moving upward in its own calm season, roots drawing from deep soil without effort or speed. No thoughts crowded these moments. No words rose to fill them. He simply remained, letting the darkness wrap around him as it wrapped around every resting form, every patient field, every blade of grass heavy with dew, without distinction or need, only presence so quiet it merged completely with the night, then stepped onward along the path when the silence had breathed its full, slow measure around him. These faint memories survived only in the softest of whispers, shared when the last warmth had faded from the stones and breathing had grown too slow for speech. A voice might murmur how he had once stood beside a quiet garden through the longest, darkest stretch of night, simply there while the earth rested under its own gentle turning. Another might recall the time he steadied a leaning gate-post with calm hands, working beside the owner in silence until the task settled into place, then continuing into the dark without a backward glance. Such fragments were never told to impress. They were small, steady comforts, offered like the final glow of a dying fire. Gentle, unremarkable, easily released when eyelids grew too heavy and silence took their place. The night now holds you in its deepest, most loving fold. Your body rests completely against the bed, every limb heavy and loose, surrendered to the soft, pleasant weight of perfect rest. Breaths come slower than ever, long, effortless draws that fill you without effort, longer releases that let everything go gently. Silences between so wide and calm the quiet has room to grow endless. Thoughts have drifted far apart, floating separate and light as leaves on still water, no longer needing to connect or hold shape. Let them scatter without care. The low cottages breathing in slow, shared rhythm. The patient river carrying only its own calm flow. The soft press of dew on every surface. The buried warmth waiting quietly beneath ash. Nothing asks to be kept. Everything continues, soft and unchanging. The tale drifts onward in its gentle, unbroken current, flowing like the dark river through the endless night, waiting only for the soft, inevitable pull of sleep to gather you fully beneath its surface, into the wide, kind, endless quiet, where all things rest without effort or end. The night has become so vast and gentle now that it feels like one slow, endless breath drawn by the entire world. Darkness lies thick and seamless, soft as the deepest sleep, covering cottages, meadows, river, and distant hills in the same unvarying hush without edge or variation. The clouds remain heavy and still overhead, locked in place, holding back every hint of light so completely that the idea of morning seems far away, almost forgotten. Dew has settled in such quiet abundance that it clings patiently to every surface, straw on roofs, darkened and weighted evenly, grass blades bowed low in soft, uniform curves, willow leaves hanging motionless with their small loads of moisture, each drop waiting its own unhurried moment before falling, soundlessly to the earth that receives it without stir. Inside the potter's low cottage, the calm has deepened until it feels like the room has become part of the night itself. The wheel rests untouched, its broad wooden surface still bearing those faint, even spirals from the last slow turn, gentle ridges where hands moved with perfect patience, pressing and releasing in the same steady rhythm that left no haste behind. The shelves along the wall hold their quiet gathering of forms, wide bowls with rims curved open in soft invitation, tall jars with bodies rounded smoothly in balanced symmetry, every piece sitting so naturally. They seem grown from the same patient. Earth as the walls. The air carries the cool, settled scent of clay long at rest. Beneath it, the gentlest possible whisper of dried herbs, lavender stems that have given up nearly all their perfume, chamomile heads pale and quiet now, all releasing only the faintest trace when the stillness breathes. On the pallet near the hearth, the potter lies in utter, peaceful surrender, blanket drawn high across his chest, one hand resting open near his side, fingers loose and relaxed in their natural curve. His breathing has reached its slowest, most effortless tide. Inhalations, so long and full they seem to draw the quiet of the room inward. Exhalations, so gentle and prolonged, they release everything without remainder. Silences between each breath so wide and calm that the night itself seems to pause within them. The timbers overhead give no sound. The straw beneath the mattress lies completely still. The embers beneath their thick covering of ash continue their patient, invisible warmth, rising in waves so soft they touch the stones without waking anything at all. A short way along the dew-laden path, where nettles and hawthorn stand dark and silent, the thatcher's cottage rests wrapped in the same profound, unbroken peace. The roof lies thick and even, straw laid in careful, overlapping layers that slope gently without hurry, every stalk combed downward so precisely that the whole surface feels like one smooth, patient curve ready to guide water away when the time comes. Inside, the hearth holds its low, secret heat, ash smoothed pale and flat across the top, coals cradled deep beneath, sending warmth upward in slow, even pulses that reach every corner without brightness or movement. Tools hang motionless in their places, shears suspended by handles shaped perfectly to familiar palms, mallet resting flat beside them, hook turned safely against the wall. The table stands bare except for the clean bowl and the cup set upside down, everything arranged with the same quiet care that marks every task here. On the broad pallet, the thatcher sleeps facing the hearth, blanket tucked gently close, face smoothed into complete and effortless rest, every line of the day dissolved by the depth of this night's calm. His breathing follows the same slow rhythm as the house around him. Long, full draws of air without any rush, longer releases into silence, pauses so vast the quiet has room to settle deeper still, to become part of the very stillness. Beyond the last scattered homes, the land stretches into pure, enveloping black without end. The barley fields lie heavy and motionless, grain heads bowed low under the weight of ripeness and dew, every stalk curved in the same patient, waiting arc that speaks of seasons turning without announcement. Grasses between the furrows press close to the earth, holding faint traces of earlier passage now, recovered so gradually they blend into the night's gentle breathing. The river continues its dark, steady flow, a quiet current winding through the landscape, surface calm as untouched sleep, carrying only the slow, soundless glide of water over stones rounded by centuries of the same soft, unvarying touch. Willow branches trail without motion, leaves brushing the flow in faint, repetitive whispers that create no disturbance. Reeds along the banks stand tall and still, heads inclined slightly forward in silent harmony with the hush they help sustain. In the softest, most distant layers of the old tales, the imagined king moved through these deepest hours without ever breaking the quiet. His steps fell so lightly they became part of the night, boots pressing gently into damp earth that gave way without trace, cloakum gathering dew in even, darkening lines along the wool. He might pause where the river curved nearest the sleeping cottages, standing on the low bank to feel the cool air rising from the water. The faint, steady vibration of its patient flow through the ground beneath him. Or he might rest a hand against the wide trunk of an ancient orchard oak, palm open to the rough bark, sensing the tree's slow, hidden life, sap rising in its own calm season, roots drawing from deep soil without effort or speed. No thoughts pressed upon these moments. No words were needed to fill them. He simply remained within the stillness, letting the darkness fold around him as it folded around every resting cottage, every patient meadow, every blade of grass heavy with dew, without preference or distinction, only presence so complete. It merged fully with the night. Then continued along the path, when the silence had exhaled its full, slow measure around him. These faint memories lived on only in the gentlest of murmurs, shared when the last warmth had faded from the hearthstones and breathing had grown too slow for speech. A voice might whisper how he had once stood beside a quiet garden, through the longest stretch of starless dark, simply there while the earth rested under its own gentle turning. Another might recall the time he steadied a sagging gate-post with calm hands, working beside the owner in silence until the task settled naturally into place, then walking onward into the night without a glance behind. Such fragments carried no weight of wonder. They were small, steady comforts, offered like the final breath of a dying fire. Gentle, unremarkable, easily released when silence became deeper than words. The night now holds you in its deepest, most tender embrace. Your body has sunk fully into the bed, every limb heavy and loose, surrendered to the soft, pleasant weight of complete rest. Breaths arrive slower still, long, effortless inhalations that fill you without effort, longer exhalations that release everything gently, silences between so wide and calm. The quiet has room to grow without limit. Thoughts have drifted far apart, floating separate and weightless, no longer needing to connect or remain. Let them scatter without reaching. The low cottages breathing in slow, shared rhythm. The patient river sliding onward with only time in its current. The soft weight of dew on every surface. The buried warmth waiting quietly beneath ash. Nothing requires holding. Everything continues, soft and unchanging. The tale flows onward in its gentle, unbroken current, drifting like the dark river through the endless night, waiting only for the soft, inevitable moment when sleep gathers you completely beneath its surface, into the wide, kind, endless quiet, where all things rest without effort or end. The night has grown so wide and gentle now that it feels like the softest possible ocean of quiet, holding everything in one slow, endless embrace. Darkness flows without beginning or end, deep and kind, covering the cottages, the fields, the winding river, the distant hills in the same calm, unvarying hush that asks for nothing and gives everything. The clouds remain thick and motionless overhead, heavy with their own stillness, sealing away any trace of light so thoroughly that the world below rests in perfect, unbroken shadow. Dew clings patiently to every surface. Straw roofs, heavy and dark with even moisture. Grass blades curved low in soft, uniform bows. Willow leaves hanging motionless with their quiet burdens. Each tiny drop waiting its own unhurried moment before falling silently to the earth that welcomes it without sound. In the potter's low cottage, the peace has deepened until the room seems to have become one with the night itself. The wheel stands silent, its broad wooden face still marked by those faint, even spirals from the last gentle turn. Small ridges where hands moved with calm, steady pressure. Circles forming softly and fading back into smoothness without rush. The shelves hold their quiet company of shapes, wide bowls with rims that open gently like resting hands, tall jars with bodies rounded in balanced, patient symmetry, every piece sitting so naturally. They feel part of the same quiet earth as the walls around them. The air carries the cool, settled breath of clay long at rest. Beneath it, the softest possible whisper of dried herbs. Lavender, stems brittle and nearly scentless now, chamomile heads pale and faded, all offering only the gentlest trace when the stillness itself seems to sigh. On the pallet near the hearth, the potter lies in complete, effortless surrender, blanket drawn high across his chest, one hand resting open near his side, fingers loose and uncurled in their natural, relaxed shape. His breathing has slowed to its deepest, most peaceful rhythm, inhalations, so long and full they draw, the quiet inward like a slow tide. Exhalations so gentle and prolonged, they release everything without trace. Silences between each breath so wide and calm that the night seems to rest within them. The timbers overhead remain perfectly still. The straw beneath the mattress lies without movement. The embers beneath their thick blanket of ash continue their patient, buried warmth, rising in waves so soft, and even they touch the stones without waking the smallest particle of dust. A short distance along the dew-soaked path, where nettles and hawthorn stand dark and unmoving, the thatcher's cottage rests wrapped in the same profound, seamless calm. The roof lies thick and smooth, straw laid in careful, overlapping courses that slope gently without haste, every stalk combed downward so evenly that the surface feels like one continuous, patient curve ready to turn water aside in its own quiet time. Inside, the hearth holds its low, secret heat. Ash smoothed pale and flat across the top, coals nested deep beneath, sending warmth upward in slow, even pulses that reach every corner without brightness or stir. Tools hang in perfect stillness, shears suspended by handles worn to the exact shape of familiar palms, mallet laid flat beside them, hook turned safely against the wall. The table stands empty except for the clean bowl and the cup placed upside down, everything arranged with the same steady, unhurried care. On the broad pallet, the thatcher sleeps facing the hearth, blanket tucked gently close, face smoothed into utter peace, every line of effort dissolved by the depth of this night's rest. His breathing follows the house's own slow tide, long, full draws of air without any hurry, longer releases into silence, pauses so vast the quiet has room to settle deeper, to become the very air itself. Beyond the last low dwellings, the land stretches into pure, enveloping darkness without limit. The barley fields lie heavy and still, grain heads bowed low under ripeness and dew, every stalk curved in the same patient arc of waiting that speaks of seasons turning without fanfare or rush. Grasses between the furrows press close to the earth, holding faint traces of earlier. Footsteps now recovered so gradually, they merge into the night's gentle breathing. The river flows on without sound or haste, a dark, steady current threading through the black, surface calm as deepest sleep, carrying only the slow, soundless glide of water over stones smoothed round by centuries of the same soft, unchanging touch. Willow branches trail without stirring, leaves brushing the flow in faint, repetitive whispers that disturb nothing. Reeds along the banks stand tall and motionless, heads tilted slightly forward in silent accord with the hush they help deepen. In the softest, most distant echoes of the old tales, the imagined king continued to walk these deepest hours without ever breaking the quiet. His steps fell so lightly, they became part of the night. Boots, pressing gently into damp, earth that yielded without mark, cloakum gathering dew in even, darkening lines along the wool. He might linger where the river bent nearest the sleeping cottages, standing on the low bank to feel the cool air rising from the water. The faint, steady vibration of its patient flow through the ground beneath him. Or he might rest a hand against the wide trunk of an ancient orchard oak, palm open to the rough bark, sensing the tree's slow, hidden life, sap rising in its own calm season, roots drawing from deep soil without effort or speed. No thoughts crowded these moments, no words rose to fill them. He simply remained within the stillness, letting the darkness fold around him as it folded around every resting cottage, every patient meadow, every blade of grass heavy with dew, without choice or distinction, only presence so quiet it merged, completely with the night, then stepped onward along the path when the silence had breathed its full, slow measure around him. These faint memories survived, only in the gentlest of murmurs, shared when the last warmth had faded from the hearthstones and breathing had grown too slow for speech. A voice might whisper how he had once stood beside a quiet garden, through the longest stretch of starless dark, simply there while the earth rested under its own gentle turning. Another might recall the time he steadied a leaning gate-post with calm hands, working beside the owner in silence until the task settled naturally into place, then walking onward into the night without a glance behind. Such fragments carried no urgency. They were small, steady comforts, offered like the final breath of a dying fire. Gentle, unremarkable, easily released when silence became deeper than words. The night now cradles you in its deepest, most loving hold. Your body rests fully against the bed, every limb heavy and loose, surrendered to the soft, pleasant weight of complete rest. Breaths arrive slower still, long, effortless inhalations that fill you without effort, longer exhalations that let everything go gently, silences between so wide and calm. The quiet has room to grow without end. Thoughts have drifted far apart, floating separate and weightless, no longer needing to connect or linger. Let them scatter without reaching. The low cottages breathing in slow, shared rhythm. The patient river carrying only its own calm flow. The soft press of dew on every surface. The buried warmth waiting quietly beneath ash. Nothing requires holding. Everything continues, soft and unchanging. The tale drifts onward in its gentle, unbroken current, flowing like the dark river through the endless night, waiting only for the soft, inevitable moment when sleep gathers you completely beneath its surface, into the wide, kind, endless quiet, where all things rest without effort or end. The night has become so immense and tender now that it feels like the gentlest possible sea of quiet, cradling every small thing in one slow, unbroken wave of rest. Darkness lies deep and seamless, soft as the inside of a long-held dream, flowing over cottages, fields, riverbanks, and far hills without hurry or distinction. The clouds hang thick and perfectly still overhead, heavy with their own calm, sealing away every last trace of light, so that the world below rests in pure, endless shadow. Dew clings patiently to every surface. Straw roofs darkened evenly with moisture. Grass blades bowed low in soft, uniform curves. Willow leaves hanging motionless with their quiet burdens. Each tiny drop waiting its own unhurried moment before falling soundlessly into soil that absorbs it without the smallest stir. In the potter's low cottage, the hush has deepened until the room seems woven into the very fabric of the night. The wheel stands silent, its broad wooden surface still bearing those faint, even spirals from the last gentle turn. Small ridges where hands moved with calm, steady patience, circles forming softly before fading back into smoothness without any trace of haste. The shelves hold their quiet assembly of shapes, wide bowls with rims that curve open in gentle welcome, tall jars with bodies rounded in balanced, unhurried symmetry, every piece resting so naturally they feel part of the same patient earth as the walls surrounding them. The air carries the cool, settled scent of clay long at rest. Beneath it, the softest possible whisper of dried herbs, lavender stems brittle and nearly scentless, chamomile heads pale and quiet now, all offering only the faintest trace when the stillness itself seems to breathe. On the pallet, near the hearth, the potter lies in complete, effortless surrender. Blanket drawn high across his chest, one hand resting open near his side, fingers loose and uncurled in their natural, relaxed shape. His breathing has reached its slowest, most peaceful tide. Inhalations so long and full, they draw the quiet inward like a slow, endless tide. Exhalations so gentle and prolonged, they release everything without remainder. Silences between each breath so wide and calm that the night seems to rest within them completely. The timbers overhead remain perfectly still. The straw beneath the mattress lies without the slightest shift. The embers beneath their thick blanket of ash continue their patient, buried warmth, rising in waves so soft, and even they touch the stones, without waking even the finest mote of dust. A short distance along the dew-heavy path, where nettles and hawthorn stand dark and unmoving, the thatcher's cottage rests wrapped in the same profound, seamless calm. The roof lies thick and smooth, straw laid in careful, overlapping courses that slope gently without haste, every stalk combed downward so evenly that the surface feels like one continuous, patient curve ready to guide water away in its own quiet time. Inside, the hearth holds its low, secret heat, ash smoothed pale and flat across the top, coals nested deep beneath, sending warmth upward in slow, even pulses that reach every corner without brightness or movement. Tools hang in perfect stillness, shears suspended by handles shaped to familiar palms, mallet laid flat beside them, hook turned safely against the wall. The table stands bare except for the clean bowl and the cup placed upside down, everything arranged with the same steady, unhurried care. On the broad pallet, the thatcher sleeps facing the hearth, blanket tucked gently close, face smoothed into utter peace, every line of effort dissolved by the depth of this night's rest. His breathing follows the house's own slow rhythm, long, full draws of air without any hurry, longer releases into silence, pauses so vast the quiet has room to settle deeper, to become the very stillness itself. Beyond the last scattered homes, the land stretches into pure, enveloping darkness without boundary. The barley fields lie heavy and motionless, grain heads bowed low under ripeness and dew, every stalk curved in the same patient arc of waiting that speaks of seasons turning without. Announcement or rush, grasses between the furrows press close to the earth, holding faint traces of earlier. Footsteps now recovered so gradually, they blend into the night's gentle breathing. The river flows on without sound or haste, a dark, steady current threading through the black. Surface calm as deepest sleep, carrying only the slow, soundless glide of water over stones smoothed round by centuries of the same soft, unchanging touch. Willow branches trail without stirring, leaves brushing the flow in faint, repetitive whispers that disturb nothing. Reeds along the banks stand tall and motionless, heads tilted slightly forward in silent harmony with the hush they help sustain. In the softest, most distant echoes of the old tales, the imagined king moved through these deepest hours without ever breaking the quiet. His steps fell so lightly, they became part of the night. Boots, pressing gently into damp, earth that yielded without mark, cloakum gathering dew in even, darkening lines along the wool. He might linger where the river curved nearest the sleeping cottages, standing on the low bank to feel the cool air rising from the water. The faint, steady vibration of its patient flow through the ground beneath him. Or he might rest a hand against the wide trunk of an ancient orchard oak, palm open to the rough bark, sensing the tree's slow, hidden life, sap rising in its own calm season, roots drawing from deep soil without effort or speed. No thoughts crowded these moments, no words rose to fill them. He simply remained within the stillness, letting the darkness fold around him as it folded around every resting cottage, every patient meadow, every blade of grass heavy with dew, without choice or distinction, only presence so quiet it merged, completely with the night, then stepped onward along the path when the silence had breathed its full, slow measure around him. These faint memories survived, only in the gentlest of murmurs, shared when the last warmth had faded from the hearthstones and breathing had grown too slow for speech. A voice might whisper how he had once stood beside a quiet garden through the longest stretch of starless dark, simply there while the earth rested under its own gentle turning. Another might recall the time he steadied a leaning gate-post with calm hands, working beside the owner in silence until the task settled naturally into place, then walking onward into the night without a glance behind. Such fragments carried no urgency. They were small, steady comforts, offered like the final breath of a dying fire. Gentle, unremarkable, easily released when silence became deeper than words. The night now holds you in its deepest, most tender fold. Your body rests fully against the bed, every limb heavy and loose, surrendered to the soft, pleasant weight of complete rest. Breaths arrive slower still, long, effortless inhalations that fill you without effort, longer exhalations that let everything go gently, silences between so wide and calm. The quiet has room to grow without end. Thoughts have drifted far apart, floating separate and weightless, no longer needing to connect or remain. Let them scatter without reaching. The low cottages breathing in slow, shared rhythm. The patient river carrying only its own calm flow. The soft press of dew on every surface. The buried warmth waiting quietly beneath ash. Nothing requires holding. Everything continues, soft and unchanging. The tale drifts onward in its gentle, unbroken current, flowing like the dark river through the endless night, waiting only for the soft, inevitable moment when sleep gathers you completely beneath its surface, into the wide, kind, endless quiet, where all things rest without effort or end. The night has become so vast and tender now that it feels like the gentlest possible hush drawn slowly over everything that exists. Darkness lies deep and complete, soft as the final exhale before rest claims its full hold, flowing without boundary over the low cottages, the patient fields, the quiet river, the distant hills, until all outlines soften and merge into one calm, unbroken whole. The clouds remain thick and still overhead, heavy with their own quiet, sealing away the last thought of light so that the world rests in perfect, endless shadow. Dew clings softly to every surface. Straw roofs heavy with even moisture, grass blades bowed in gentle uniform arcs, willow leaves hanging motionless with their small, patient drops, each one holding its weight without hurry until the quiet itself seems to release them one by one, falling soundlessly into soil that receives them without ripple or trace. In the potter's cottage, the stillness has deepened until the room breathes as one with the night. The wheel stands silent, its surface long settled. Faint spirals faded into smooth wood under the patient touch of time. The shelves hold their quiet forms, bowls and jars resting in natural balance, shapes so familiar they need no watching. The air carries only the faintest memory of clay and herbs, now cooled and still, releasing nothing more. On the pallet, the potter lies completely at rest, blanket high, hand open, breathing so slow and even it becomes part of the greater silence. Long, full inhalations that draw the quiet inward, longer exhalations that let everything go. Silences between so wide the hush settles deeper still. The timbers overhead hold their peace. The straw beneath lies motionless. The embers beneath ash give off their last faint warmth, fading gently without flicker or sound. Along the dew-dark path, the thatcher's cottage rests in the same unbroken calm. The roof lies thick and smooth, straw aligned in patient courses, waiting for whatever comes next without concern. Inside, the hearth holds only the memory of heat. Ash, pale and flat, coals quiet beneath, warmth drifting upward in waves too soft to name. Tools hang still in their places. The table stands empty and clean. On the pallet, the thatcher sleeps facing the hearth, blanket close, face smoothed into perfect peace, breathing slow and even. Long draws of air, longer releases into silence, pauses vast enough for the quiet to fill completely. Beyond the cottages, the land lies wrapped in pure darkness. Barley fields rest heavy, heads bowed low under dew and ripeness, stalks curved in patient waiting. Grasses press close to the earth, recovered now into stillness. The river flows on without sound, dark and steady, surface calm as sleep itself, carrying only the slow glide of water over stones smoothed by endless time. Willow branches trail motionless, reeds stand tall and quiet, everything held in the same gentle hush. In the oldest, softest layers of the tales, the imagined king faded into these deepest hours without ever disturbing the quiet. His steps became part of the night, light, unmarking, cloak gathering dew as he moved along paths worn smooth by countless calm feet. He paused sometimes by the river, or beside an ancient oak, hand resting open, sensing the slow life within without need for words or thought. The darkness folded around him as it folded around every resting place, every patient field, every blade of grass, without distinction, without demand, until presence and stillness were one, and he drifted onward into the greater silence. These faint memories linger only as the gentlest whispers now, shared long ago when fires died to ash, and breathing grew too slow for speech, offered like the final breath before rest takes hold. Small, steady, unremarkable, easily released into the quiet that follows. The night holds everything now in its deepest, kindest fold. Your body rests heavy against the bed, limbs loose and surrendered, every muscle softened into perfect calm. Breaths arrive slower still. Long, effortless inhalations that fill without effort. Longer exhalations that release without trace. Silences between so wide and peaceful, the quiet grows endless. Thoughts have drifted far apart, floating separate and light. No longer tethered, no longer needing to hold shape or meaning. Let them scatter gently. The low cottages breathing in slow unison, the patient river sliding onward with only time in its current, the soft weight of dew on every surface, the buried warmth fading quietly beneath ash. Nothing needs to be kept, nothing needs to be followed. Everything continues, soft and unchanging, fading slowly into the wide, welcoming dark. The hush deepens further, softer, slower, until even the words themselves grow faint, drifting, settling, dissolving into silence.